Good day. Today we are going to go through the EX Tutorial 3 in class project. And I have gone through with y'all now for the last several projects on how to download it from SAM, open it up, and save it. So I'm not going to go through any of those things for this project. You can see I've already saved it as my _2, and we're ready to get started. So step 1 is on the employee list worksheet. We'll go to employee list, select cells A1 through B1, and use the format painter to copy the format only to the range A2 to B9. So the format painter is right here in red there. So we're going to use that. You've got your cells A1 through B1 selected. Click the format painter and it copies the format of those cells, and we're going to paint it onto cells A2 through B9. And as you do that, you can see how the font changes, the size changes, all that type of good stuff. Step 2 is in cell B2 or B1, enter BS001, and then in cell B2, enter CG001. And then in B3, we're going to start typing DH, and that's where the flash fill is going to come in and say, I see a pattern, do you want to fill this in? We do, so we're going to hit enter, and it's going to fill everything in for us. So that's step 2. Step 3, on the employee timesheet, merge and center the range A1 through D1, and then format the range using the title cell style. Okay, so the two things that we need in here is the merge and center, which is right here, and then the cell styles, which is right here. Now, if your screen is small, if you don't see all those styles, you're going to see an icon right there instead that says cell styles, and then you can click the down arrow to select a cell style. And let me show that to you. So I'm going to make my screen a little bit smaller, and you can see there the cell styles icon, and you can click the down arrow and you see all the styles like you did when the screen was larger. Okay, I'm going to make my screen bigger again, and I'm going to select A1 through D1, and I'm going to merge and center, and then I'm going to click the down arrow on the cell styles, and I'm going to click title. So that's what it's going to look like now. Then it says to merge and center the range A2 through D2 and change the font to Arial and the font size to 14. So we already know where the merge and center is. This is your font style, and your font size is right here. So I'm going to select A2 through D2. I'm going to say merge and center, and then I'm going to click the down arrow here for font and choose Arial, and then I'm going to change the font size to 14. Step 5, format the range A9 to D9 using the heading 3 cell style. So again, we're going to use the cell style. So we got A9 through D9, and under your cell styles here, click the down arrow, and we want heading 3. So here under titles and headings, we're going to choose heading 3. And then it wants us to center the range. So we're just going to hit the center button. These are your formatting, your center, center, right, left justification, that type of stuff. You also have text rotation is in here. These top 3 that you see, that is your alignment vertically in a cell. So very top of the cell, middle of the cell, bottom of the cell. the other three that are underneath here is your justification horizontally, so left, center, or right. So in our case, we want to center. So click your center button. Step 6. In cell C5, create a formula using the VLOOKUP function to look up the value of cell C4 in the range A1 to B9 on the employee list worksheet. Okay, so this is one of the functions that Excel provides you. It's called VLOOKUP. And basically what we're wanting to do is here in cell C5, we've got an employee name above here in C4. We want to put his employee number. That employee number is referenced in the employee list right here. So Davon Hastings, we want DH001 to be put in that field on the other sheet. But when we change this name, if we were to change this name for the next employee, we don't want to have to go back to the employee list and look that up again. So we put in a formula that says, hey, match what's in cell C4 to what's in this table and put in this information. So that's what the VLOOKUP function does. So you can type this in, but for right now, I want to go through just using the GUI, the menu interface in which to do it. The easiest way to do that is to click your function button here, and that is this button right here. That gives you access to all the built-in functions in Excel through a menu interface. So I'm going to click the function button, and you'll see it automatically puts the equal sign in there. And what I want to do is, it's going to come up with the most recently used, but I'm going to come down here to lookup and reference. And down at the very bottom is your VLOOKUP, and that means a vertical lookup. So we're looking vertically across rows to find matching data. So there's your VLOOKUP, and click OK. So now these are all the parameters for this VLOOKUP table. The lookup value. So that lookup value is what cell are we looking to find the information that we want to look up. And in our case, it is cell C4. So you can click on cell C4, or you can type in C4, whichever one you want to do. The table array. The table array is the table in which we are looking up this information. So somewhere in the table that we're looking up is the word Davon Hastings. So if you click this button off to the side, come over here and click Employee List, and then select A1 through B9. And then hit this button again to make it big. And you'll see it has the sheet name, Employee List, and then says A1 to B9. Okay, so the next parameter is the column index number. What this means is that in that table that we just selected, which column holds the value that we want to put in this cell of C5. So that value in our table was column 2. So we just literally put a 2 here. If your table was 10 cells long, if it had 10 columns and it was column 6, then you would put column 6. In our case, we only have 2 columns. The first column is the employee names, which is what is matching in C4. And then the second column is the value that we want to see. That's the employee number that's going to go into C5. And then this range lookup, it is an optional value. And it basically says, okay, if you say true, then it's going to find a close match. If you say false, which is the default, then it's going to find an exact match, which means it has to find the word Davon Hastings. If it's misspelled or something like that, it's going to come up and say, hey, I didn't find it. So we want to say false. And when you're done with all of that, I want you to look at this. You can see as we are filling out this dialog box, it's filling in the formula up here. And you can see the parameters. So you got VLOOKUP, and then you have an open parentheses, first parameter, second parameter, third parameter, fourth parameter, close parentheses. That is how you would type in a formula. So you can do it either way. You can use a dialog box like this, or you can type it in. I would suggest learning how to do it both ways, because on quizzes, it may ask you to type it. It may ask you to use a dialog box. Some of the first quizzes, it'll give you the dialog box. Sometimes when we use it in other modules, it's going to want you to type it. So it's good to know how to do it both ways. So once you're done, you can say OK. And you'll see it puts in the value DH001, which is what we want. Okay, so that was step 7. Step 6. In step 7, in cell B7, we want to use the today function to display the current date. So B7, and we want the current date. So this is a basic function, and we're going to type it in, and you say equal, and then it's today, just the word today, but make sure you open and close your parentheses. Today does not take any parameters, so it's just an open and close. All functions will have parentheses at the end of, parentheses at the end of them. So if you have parameters, they go inside the parentheses. If they don't have parameters, you still have to put that open parentheses and the closed parentheses. Once you hit enter, it puts in the date. And then each time that you open this worksheet, if it's on a different day, this date will change because it's looking for today. And today may be tomorrow when you open it tomorrow. Okay, step 8. Use autofill to fill the range B11 to B23 based on cell B10. Okay, so here's B10. It already has the date in it. And we're going to use the autofill function, which is you click on, it's what we've been using to copy formulas. So click on this box that's down here in the bottom right-hand corner until your cursor changes. Click on it and drag down. Because it's a date and we're dragging it down, it's going to automatically fill it. It's automatically going to increment the date. It's just like we did with when we copied formulas. That when we copied a formula and it had a cell reference in it, it would increment that cell reference. Well, in this case, it's incrementing the date. Okay. Step 9. In cell D10, create a formula that uses the if function to check if the value in cell C10 is equal to 0. If the condition is true, the current cell should be made empty. That is equal to open and close quotes with nothing in it. If the condition is false, then the current cell should display the result of multiplying C10, which is the number of hours, by cell D7, which is the hourly wage. You're going to use a relative reference to cell C10 and an absolute reference to cell D7 so that the formula can be copied to other cells. So this is where we're going to start getting into absolute and relative referencing. And this will be a very good example of what those two things do. So let's start first with our formula. We're going to do insert our function, and we want logical, because an if statement is logical. It's okay, if it's this, then do this. It has some kind of a logical test in it. And there is our if right there. So I'm going to say okay. So our logical test, it said that we want to check if the value in cell C10 is equal to 0. So our logical test is C10 and whether or not it's equal to 0. That is our test. Then the value, if it's true, if it's equal to 0, we want the cell to be blank. So we're just going to open and close quotes. That means it's blank. It's not going to put anything in there. And then the value if it's false, which means they worked hours that day. That day they worked, 7, 8, 6 hours, and we want to calculate how much we're going to pay them for that day. And so that value is C10 times D7. And I'm not going to do the the absolute and relative referencing right now because I want to show you what this is going to do. So we're going to say, okay, so here it's calculated out. And the next step is going to say, let's copy it down. So let's do that. Let's copy it down. If we copy it, okay, we're getting some funky values in here, right? Here we get a 0. Why are we getting a 0 there? Because he worked 7 hours. It should be 7 times 16.55. Well, look at your formula. It is no longer trying to multiply it by cell D7 like it should be. It's doing D8 because we copied that down. And when we copy that formula down, it increments all the cell references. But we don't want that. We want this to always be cell D7 no matter where we move that formula, because it's always, the hourly wage is always in that cell. So to fix that, let's go back to cell D10. And if we click up here in this formula bar and highlight our cells, you'll see D7 is in red. That's what we want. And there's a shortcut to do this, and it is the F4 key on your keyboard. And if you hit F4, you'll notice it puts a $D and a $7. That is absolute referencing. That means that $sign in front of the D means no matter where I move it left or right, my column is going to stay the same. It's always going to be D. And the $7 means anywhere I move that formula up or down, the cell reference is always going to be 7. So in this case, no matter where I move this formula, that cell is always going to be D7. That's always where we're going to reference it. So that's why it's called absolute referencing, because absolutely nothing is going to change that cell reference unless you manually go in there and change it yourself. So we're going to hit enter, and we're going to come down and we're going to copy it down again. And as we do that, you're going to see now we get actual values, which is what we want. And if you look at the formulas, let's come down here to cell D19. So we want to calculate the hourly wage, which is 8.75 times 16.55. And if you click in here, you will see it is doing cell C19 times D7. D7 didn't change even though we moved it down. But because this is relative referencing, your C19 is relative referencing, when we moved that formula, the cell number, the cell reference increased as well. And then in these, you can see where these are these are blank. That is where our if statement came in, because we said if this value is equal to 0, I'm not going to pay him anything if it's equal to 0, so I just want it to be blank. So that's what we've done. That's what your if statement has done. Okay, step 11. In cell C24, create a formula that uses the sum function to total cells C10 through C23. So we're going to come down here to C24, and we're going to create a formula that uses the sum function to total cells. So I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to type in sum. And this is a function, so it always opens your parentheses, select the cells that you want to sum up, and then close your parentheses. And hit enter, and it sums it for you. Now you could do the auto sum if you wanted to, or you can type it in. I suggest that you learn how to do it both ways. Then in cell D24, enter a formula that uses the sum function to total cells D10 through D23. So again, you could use the auto sum feature, you could type it in again, or you could simply copy this over, because what are we doing? This is relative cell referencing, so when I move it left or right, it's going to increment or decrement the column reference. So now that I move that over, you can see this is summing D10 through D23. Step 13. Format C10 through C24 with the number format showing 2 decimal places. So C10 through C24, your number format is up here. This is your number formatting. This is where you can choose the number format, general, long date, short date, those types of things. This is your dollar sign, which is currency, and then your percentage, and then your thousand separators, and then your increase and your decrease decimals. So we're going to hit the down arrow, and we're going to say number, and we want 2 decimal places, which it's already doing it. I would increase and decrease the decimal places just to make sure that Sam catches it properly. But make sure that there's 2 decimal places. Okay, format cell D7. So D7 here with the currency number format showing 2 decimal places. So click your down arrow on general and come to currency. And you want 2 decimal places, which it's already showing 2 decimal places. Then they want you to format the range D10 through D24 with the same format, because it is dollars that we're dealing with, right? So highlight D10 through D24, click on general and say currency, and then make sure it's 2 decimal places, which it is. Okay. Step 15. Format the range A24 to D24, A24 to D24 as bold, and then add outside border around this range. So I'm going to bold, and I'm going to add outside border. So it's going to look like that. Step 16. In cell C26, create a formula that uses the max function to display the largest value from the range C10 to C23. So formulas, again, start with an equal sign. Type in max. Open your parentheses because this is a function. It has to be parentheses. And then you want cells C10 to C23. So C10 to C23. Close your parentheses and hit enter. And it'll put the max there. Step 7. In cell C27, and create a formula that uses the min function to display the smallest value from the range C10 to C23. So this is just the opposite of max. We use min. So equals min, open your parentheses, select your cells, close your parentheses. And there you go. Average hours per day. In step 18, in cell C28, create a formula that uses the average function to display the average of the values in the range C10 to C23. So again, this is another function, and it is simply average. Open your parentheses and select your cell range. There you go. And then in cell C29, create a formula that multiplies the value in cell C28 by 7. So this is just a basic formula, equals C28 times 7. And that gives you average hours per week. And that's the end of it. Once you're done, double check that everything looks like it should on your instruction sheet, and you are good to go. Save it and submit it, and you're all done. Thank you very much. And